Hello, everyone, and welcome to our collaborative presentation for today. We will be diving into our experiences and how we have felt that the HR system has failed us as employees. In the initial selection of this group project, there was a bit of a struggle in picking something that all of us resonated with. This initial struggle led to us wasting a lot of time in our breakout rooms discussing our lives and our jobs, and this was the start of us forming bonds and realizing we actually had a lot of things in common. We were all uni students and we were all studying the same degree, a Bachelor of Business, and we were all doing a human resource management major. Fraser actually shares a really unique perspective on human resource management, reflecting upon his research. You ask people, why they want to be a HR professional, why they want to get into HR. And to that, they say, well, I like working with people. And to me, that is a very great answer because, and it may not be correct, it's not about working with people, although there is a component of that, or a part of that. It's managing people as a resource, which to me is a different context about it. It is a very hard job. So if you want something that is essentially done every day and everything is pleasant, this is not the profession for you. Fraser's words led to deep reflection among all of us, as these aspects of HR are something that only are really recently being uncovered to us as students. Every subject that we study is another piece of the puzzle that contributes to our greater understanding of what it really takes to be a good HR manager, which seems to be all of our end goal. This really got us thinking about why we study HR and what we wanted to get out of this profession. We all had experiences in which we felt that the HR system had failed us, and we shared our stories with each other. And we would like to begin our presentation by inviting you all to listen as we share our stories and experiences.
Hello everyone, so my name is Tim and this is my vignette on the overusage of managerialism, where managers solely control the activities without any employee input. So I work in the footwear department of Rebel Sport and have enjoyed serving customers on the sales floor for the last 3 years. Working with around 30 customers a day requires a balance between catering and caring for customer needs, while also being fast-paced, moving quickly between customers. However, at this point in time, the balance is swayed too much towards the customer's needs, especially in the case of refunds, due to the influence that HR professionals have and the influence that higher managers and owners have. Because these upper managers are disconnected from what happens in the sales floor and they don't have any experience on the sales floor, their bias is not only towards Rebel's financial situation, but it's also, most importantly, towards brand image and reputation. This is not a bad thing, but in some cases, the way they do this is bad, which will be explained further. See, often customers will come in with so-called faulty soccer boots, which are within our flexible 6 to 12-month warranty. However, over 90% of the time, the boots have a small indent or ragged material on the toe of the boot that, trust me, can only possibly be attributed to wear and tear. This is normally because of the person's wrong kicking technique. Inexperienced soccer players will normally often kick straight down the ball instead of using side-footed kicks for simple things like passing. This means they follow through the ground with their toe every single time they kick it, which leads to the quick decay of the material if they don't know what they're doing. But see, none of this employee knowledge bears any meaning whatsoever to Rebel, because if you are not happy with your product, our store managers may, at their discretion, decide to exchange. To make matters worse, there is pressure from upper management to these line managers and store managers to provide refunds to customers no matter the circumstances. Pretty much so that upper management avoids what are unfounded complaints from customers. Even though this prominent issue has been brought up several times by line managers to management, they will not listen to our concerns because honestly, we are seen as dehumanized passive commodities. Really for brand image, rather than seen as what we are, valuable people. Because of this, customers can pretty much exploit Rebel Sports refund policy at their leisure to get the latest products, which is absolutely absurd. Additionally, the line managers who lead employees and pass on employee concerns are being ignored, which completely constricts their role as line managers. The managers often struggle with their own identity work and what it means to be a manager, which is made completely worse by this imbalance in power that upper management has. Therefore, this failure of HRM can be seen in managerialism, where professional managers predominantly impact the activity of rebel sport, again, without any input from employees or store managers. I've learned through this failing that it would strongly benefit upper management to look towards the needs and wants of their employees and particularly line managers with more extremely valuable sales floor knowledge and insight of the most optimal process to go about things, especially for refunds. So I will now pass on to Andrew, who will talk about his experience of unethical behaviour from HR.
So for my experience as a bartender, I have a duty to exercise a responsible service of alcohol to patrons at their venue. Alcohol has the ability to impair judgment and may lead to serious altercations or complications due to intoxication. Through my 2 years of experience, I have developed the ability to read actions and behaviours that may lead to said complications, and I have managed these scenarios swift and efficiently. On a particular busy Saturday night, a group of 6 highly intoxicated males entered the bar, managed by myself and one other trainee. 6 shots of tequila quickly, slurred one male, as the rest of the group laughed and took their seats. His initial slur and abrupt tone indicated heavy intoxication. Their ability to make it past security and enter the bar was a failure. I politely asked the man to wait as I called my team leader in order to examine the situation. However, I was redirected to the duty manager who came to assess the situation instead. Serve them anyway, she muttered as I explained that I have a duty to refuse alcohol to intoxicated patrons by law. This led to an altercation with senior management also agreeing with her decision without consulting myself or reviewing the situation in depth. Knowing the rules, I chose to follow my intuition and was later commended by my team leader for my responsible actions. I felt as though my voice was marginalized after submitting a complaint to HR with no constructive response or consequences for the misconduct of the duty manager. Instead, she did her best to assess the situation, and she had been a trusted worker for over 10 years. I felt mistreated and undermined, as though the acknowledgement from my team leader accounted for nothing, due to the ill-advised management. From that day on, the duty manager has targeted me, as I have been subjugated to unethical treatment after the incident. I will now pass on to Camille, who will talk about HR hegemony that caused major confusion in the onboarding process of employment.
That might be something you have to ask HR. I dreaded hearing this sentence, and the look on my manager's face told me he knew there was no answer to this question. Working in one of the big 4 banks had me thrust into utterly uncharted territory at the age of 18. I had just left high school, and now I had to assimilate into this corporate white-collar lifestyle. As a result of this, I had a lot of questions. What does my payslip mean? Who do I send my vaccination paperwork to? What does the new enterprise agreement even mean for my contract? I needed answers to all of these questions, and no matter who I asked, I couldn't seem to get an answer. I assumed being in a larger corporation with a large human resource team would mean that I have more support from others. On the contrary, I ended up getting lost in the complex structures of escalating inquiries to the correct team and following up on those inquiries when they weren't addressed. The process of a simple question always ended up in weeks of back and forth and always concluded in me giving up on getting an answer. I felt like I didn't fit the ideal workers, Anglo-American, or in this case, Australian caricature. Dylan Ograd linked internalizing blame with the institutional barriers that stem from gender inequality and masculine domination in the workplace. These questions remain unanswered, and I felt like it was my fault that I did not have a clear understanding of seemingly simple concepts, like being able to make sure that I get paid the right amount of money and making sure that I understand my contract thoroughly. I was, and in many ways still am, a marginalized voice in this big company. Instead of demanding that I get things clarified and made transparent to me, I have instead been conditioned to be grateful and to not question aspects of this role in fear of standing out. And I'm now going to pass on to Jason, who will share his story about the hyper-individualism of the HR department.
Working in a fast-paced work environment within the fast food industry encapsulates ongoing technology development and changes in staff turnover rate. Traditionally, the adoption of manual stamp cards as a loyalty program for avid coffee drinkers has been excelling, with low to no complaints from our customer feedback. As the fast food franchise grows and new technology development arises, complications became apparent, and disheartened feedback comes from both the customers and employees. The recent adoption of requesting current and new customers to download an app using their smartphone and registering their details online came with many complications along the way. As I had brought up this issue to my area manager, giving him detailed feedback on the user experience from both myself and our regular customers, he shrugged his shoulders as if it wasn't part of a bigger picture. I had explained to him the negative feedback I had received, especially within the older retirees age demographic with limited smartphone accessibility. He simply told me, too bad, they need to get with the program. This had angered me so much, resulting in a feud between myself and my area manager as he pulled me aside. The ethical dilemma that had arisen from this issue stemmed from their selfishness as a franchise. Simply making profit was a priority for them. This ethical dilemma had evoked powerful emotions. This lived experience had allowed me to acknowledge the exertion of power within the hierarchy in ways that aren't ethical. And as an individual working for someone else, you do what you are told, regardless if ethical or not. Our prominent struggle between the right thing to do and what is right for the greater good of the company had resulted me in handing my resignation letter after spending 5 years with the company. Looking through our experiences was a great interest of mine after hearing these stories from my group members. Upon delving into two different organizations and their bureaucratic mechanisms imposed on employees, Tim's vignette was closely related to the management system at my workplace. The unethical behaviors of HR were both evident in our lived experiences where management lacked interpersonal skills to understand their employees and simply used employees as resources for personal gains where profit and greed powered their motives. This issue is closely linked to the findings in the history and philosophy of management, where the managers at our respective workplaces displayed characteristics of selfishness, unethical decision-making, and the failings of portraying employees as humans rather than resources within an organization for personal or organizational gains. As this issue is apparent across not only of our lived experiences, it has also brought some attention at many other workplaces. And thus, our recommended solution for this dilemma would be to hold these managers accountable in empathetic mannerisms.
Another major point of relatability between our experiences was that managers were at the center of all our described failings of HRM. For example, in Jason's case management, there was selfish managers not listening to their employees, and in Camille's case, HRM was at the very least negligent in not providing adequate support to her and new employees. Contrary to the history of HRM, we now have greater advancements and access to the world around us, which is awesome for job opportunities. This does mean there is a precariat class who are stuck in a cycle of short-term and irregular jobs. Although, as we said before, this can be a good thing, especially post the GFC, HR managers particularly use this fact to value their employees' feedback and criticism much less than what it should be. To counteract this ever-present problem and failing in HRM, there needs to be accountability on the end of HR management. But this also needs to be done in a way that is empathetic and understanding to both managers and employees. We would love to recommend utilizing one of the 36 stratagems called Point at the Mulberry Tree while Cursing at the Locust Tree. Essentially, this stratagem involves getting feedback to HRM using implicit and generalized language about current problems to be fixed. It shifts the focus of the problem away from HRM, which is in this case the mulberry tree, and it puts all the feedback on the lack of regulations in place to support employees, which is just one example, which in this case is the locust tree. But the point of that is that critical feedback isn't directly confrontational and it's not directly personal at the HR managers. This is great because it means management will be more inclined to take notice of the problems and actually look to create changes. See, if it's not personal to them, they'll be more inclined to want to make a difference for the future HR management and for their employees.
The final major theme from our vignettes is the sentimentalized organizational violence, presented in both Camille and my own lived experiences. This is depicted through the Anglo-American hegemony, as they represent the non-Westernized employees in which our voices have been marginalized. As defined by Hearn, the idea of violence surpasses the idea of physical harm, including damage against the human psyche. This may impact identity, dignity, and the way in which an individual portrays themselves in the workplace. This typically has either one of two impacts. The person could confront the problem, which normally results in worsened relationships and higher staff turnover, or the employees accept the harm done to them and even unwittingly or unwillingly become complicit. In either case, the problem of dominant managers needs to be addressed, which creates our last recommendation. According to Curry, the major improvements that can be made to organizational culture lie in creating a learning environment and supporting senior managers. This can be achieved through having a reflection and mentoring session each month conducted by everyone in the business, which goes through things that have gone well and things that need improvement. This way, senior management and employees can see progress in efforts to counteract previous problems that stem from a lack of understanding. This is an exciting prospect that will contribute again to improvements in being resilient to historical failings in HRM.
Through this presentation today, it has been insightful to look through the failings of a good but imperfect HR system, which has binded us all together as a group. Firstly, we shared our experiences through failings in managerialism, hyper-individualism, hegemony, and ethics. Through this analysis of our shared experiences, we have decided what we want. We want accountability of HR managers, opportunities to provide non-confrontational critical feedback to HR problems. We want to create a learning environment, as well as adequate support from our HR managers. We hope you enjoyed our presentation today and learned firsthand about our desire to improve HR practices in the world around us for future as potential HR managers.